Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 29th of December, 2021. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, another day of, I guess not that many updates. There was a couple of big ones that I wanted to go through, but I also will be at the end here on my fifth tab, I'll be going over today's topic. Basically, I think for the refuel for the next few days is just going to be one or two topics that I'm going to be talking more deeply about rather than project updates. But before I do that, I want to get started with this update from Dankrad, who actually, I believe, works at the Ethereum Foundation as a researcher. Today he's shared a new sharding design. So, we all know that sharding is on the Ethereum roadmap. It's coming with data sharding first, and then maybe we'll get execution sharding. But the whole point of data sharding is to enhance rollups, right? Give rollups more capacity, make them more scalable, all that good stuff there. So Dankrad today has proposed a new sharding design. This isn't part of the canonical spec or anything like that right now. It's just a proposed new sharding design where instead of having independent proposers for each shard, all shard blocks in one slot are proposed together with the beacon block. This leads to a major simplification of the sharding design. Now, he describes this in this blog post here, but also in his Twitter thread. It does get a little bit technical. If you don't understand how sharding works already and how the beacon chain works already, then you probably won't understand how, his new design here, so I suggest reading up on that. But what I wanted to just talk about when it comes to sharding and the sharding design, the research around data sharding is pretty much done. But right now, what the research, done in the sense that we could develop it right now, we could put it into clients and we could have it go live and it would work. But would it work the best way it can? No, it never does, right? Software is always improving. And there are definitely complexities to it. Sharding within the crypto blockchain space is very different to sharding within a centralized database, obviously, because you have to account for all different types of things like security risks and stuff like that. So that's why the sharding paradigm is always evolving. Now, we may get data sharding in 2023 in one design, and then the design may change later on, or it might be upgraded. I mean, I'm pretty sure it'll be upgraded. I don't think that we're going to get the perfect thing from the get-go. But the thing is, Ethereum is such a large network that it becomes harder and harder to change it over time. So I think what the researchers want to do is get it to a point where it's as near, not perfect, but as near as to what is ideal as possible before putting it into the network. Because once it's actually live, it becomes a lot harder to change on the live network, as we've seen, we're in the Ethereum ecosystem for years now. So if you want to learn more about this, it'll be linked in the YouTube description below. But I think this is great. I think that we really shouldn't just settle just because we figured it out, right? When we said, oh, okay, well, we've done a sharding design now, we have a spec for it, the research is done, that's all well and good, let's just, move on to the next thing. I don't think that's the right way to go about things, and that's not the Ethereum way, definitely. The Ethereum way is to keep iterating on things, keep improving on things, and trying to get to the best possible design that we can without, getting to perfection, because nothing in software is perfect. Anyone who tells you that a piece of software is perfect is lying to you. There is always improvements to be made, and perfect really is the enemy of good when it comes to software, because if you're trying to aim for perfection, you never ship anything at the end of the day. So I think that that's actually a hard lesson that the Ethereum ecosystem learned over the last few years, is that I think with proof of stake, they always tried to get it to a point where it was quote unquote perfect, and then they came to the conclusion that, well, okay, we can improve this thing over time, but we need to just ship something. And they did. I mean, they shipped a really, really awesome design, mind you, but it is going to be improved over time. It's going to be tweaked. There's going to be things that that are going to change with that, and that's totally fine. That's exactly how Ethereum works, and that's exactly how a lot of software works. Obviously, within Ethereum, it's different because it's decentralized. You need community buy-in on things, but a lot of this stuff is technical stuff and doesn't really, it shouldn't be controversial. And stuff like that. So yeah, really, really cool to see this new sharding design from Dankrad. As I said, this isn't guaranteed to go in as part of the canonical spec. This isn't, the design that we're going to be going with. That will be decided probably next year in terms of what design we're actually going to go with, what client teams will actually build. But yeah, for now, it's just an idea that Dankrad has put together. So definitely go check this out. So Huobi, the massive centralized exchange, announced Arbitrum One based deposits and withdrawals for ETH are now available on their exchange. Awesome. I was just ranting about this, I think yesterday or the day before, about how the centralized exchanges are dragging their feet here. It's great to see Huobi finally step up to the plate and do this. They're not a small exchange. Huobi's quite large. They're obviously not as large as a Binance or a Coinbase, but it's still good to see more and more signaling from these centralized exchanges and more integrations here. So if you use Huobi, or if you want to go set up an account and use them as a fiat on-ramp to Arbitrum One, you can now do so. So super exciting to see that. I guess another big win for Arbitrum here. And on the topic of L2s, I think it's funny because everyone right now is pushing for like L2 2022, right? Like I even made a little bit of a joke about it on Twitter the other day. And I think the problem with that is that I don't know if there's been like a defined set of what is L2 2022. Like what do people actually expect to happen? Does it mean that L2s are going to explode in usage? Everyone's going to be able to basically use them, and it's going to be super cheap, and it's going to be awesome, and we're all going to be enjoying like cheap fees, and we're never going to run into scalability issues again. I don't think so. I actually think some of these L2s will hit their limits given enough usage, and people will realize that, okay, well, yes, the L2s are awesome, but they're not like infinitely scalable, right? There are still a lot of improvements that need to come. There's still a lot of things that need to be done there. So for me, L2 2022, if I had to pick a theme or at least an overall narrative that's going to push L2s forward in 2022, it's going to be their tokens. Now, you may think poorly of that. You may think that I should be looking at metrics like active users on these things and TVL and fees paid and stuff like that. But I think that when you're talking about narratives and what people actually look at in terms for a project success, it's really got to do with the token, because these alt L1s, the tokens going up in value is what brings a lot of the attention and what brings a lot of the narratives that kind of like push these things forward. Because as I've mentioned before, a lot of them have less usage than than they would have you believe through the narratives on Twitter. Like if you look on Twitter, people will have you believe that these alt L1s have way more usage than Ethereum L1, which they don't. So, but the reason why those narratives are so powerful and they spread so fast is because there's a token involved. People are incentivized to shill the things, and I think that the L2 space really needs to wake up to this and really needs to do their tokens ASAP, because without a token, they're going to struggle. And as I talked about yesterday, so I really do think that in terms of like an overall theme to match L2 2022, it's going to be the tokens. It's not going to be actual usage. It's not going to be the tech. It's not going to be anything else. I think if you were to look at one success metric, it's going to be the tokens and how well they perform, how well they do liquidity mining programs, how many users they get because of that. Because the funny thing is that there are plenty of people who hold tokens of the alt L1s, for example, and I guarantee you many of them haven't actually used the alt L1. They haven't even used Ethereum. They just kind of like know the narratives, know the kind of stories of, okay, Ethereum has high fees. These alt L1s claim to, have lower fees. So I'm going to buy these tokens. I'm going to ride this narrative up. And they rarely use the actual network. And I think the same thing is going to happen with the L2s. Like, it's not going to be anything different here, but at least with the L2s, we're going to be able to get a lot of the people who are using Ethereum today, a lot of people who are on chain today, to experience a cheaper version of Ethereum while still inheriting the, security and decentralization there. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. As I said, I expect all the L2s that are kind of like here today to do a token within the next 3 to 6 months. I expect like pretty much any of the new ones that pop online, whether they be forks or kind of like new initiatives, they're going to have tokens from the get-go, because otherwise they won't be able to compete. And I think that the L2 teams are waking up to this, in that it doesn't matter how good your tech is or how cool it is, how well it works. If there's no incentive for people to kind of onboard onto it, if there's no marketing, if there's no business development, then you're going to be left in the dust, even if it's objectively better technology and objectively better experience. Build it and they will come is a meme. I don't think you can just build something and then just sit there on your hands, sitting on your hands and being like, oh, I built this awesome thing, everyone's going to come use it. That's just not how it works. And that's not how it works for anything, not just crypto products. It's literally anything. If no one knows about it, then no one's going to use it. So I think that the marketing and business development of these L2s needs to ramp up, and the fastest way to ramp that up is just to issue a token. And the funny thing is, it doesn't even make sense if it doesn't even matter if the token doesn't make sense. You can make it make sense later. The token really, at the end of the day, I think the token's most powerful thing is regardless of the fundamental value drivers, regardless of its actual utility, its most powerful thing is being a shelling point for people to kind of like rally around and to kind of have skin in the game for them to, go and be your marketing and BD departments essentially. So yeah, anyway, a little bit off track there, but great to see Huobi be supporting Arbitrum One deposits and withdrawals here. Next up is just a teaser video from Argent teasing their L2 wallet with the integration with ZK Sync. So you can invest in Yearn's Lido Curve Vault, which used to be 5 transactions with just 1 now using Argent. I think Argent, and Polly now has actually been saying this a lot lately, I think Argent is a sleeper, because what Argent does is it not only does it support these L2s and have like a nice interface to kind of interact with these things, but they simplify the experience down to, as they said, 1 click here from 5 clicks, because this is what Web 2 does really well. They've kind of simplified the user experience down so much that anything you need to access as part of your everyday use of an app is literally 1 to 2 clicks away. Anything more than 2-3 clicks, it's too much for people. Like if you'll notice when you go and do online shopping, for example, on Amazon or eBay, it's 1 to 2 clicks to buy something. They don't make you go through all these hoops just to buy something, like 10 different hoops just to buy, because they know that the more clicks there are, the higher chance that people will kind of like click off or not actually buy the product or get annoyed and leave. The same is true for crypto. There's no way in hell we're going to onboard the world to Ethereum layer 1, where not only do they have to pay the gas fees, the transactions are slow, obviously not as slow as Bitcoin's 10-minute blocks, but they're still slow, 13-second blocks or whatever. You have multiple clicks for like approving tokens to trade and stuff like that, like all that sort of stuff. I'm sorry, but like that's not how we're going to get mass adoption. We're not going to. It's not even going to. Not even mass adoption. We're not going to get any adoption like that. Like, and this isn't something that the Altel ones have solved either. This isn't something that anyone has solved really. I think Argent is the closest in terms of solving these, user experience complexity issues here. But we have to get to where Web 2 is today. 1 to 2 clicks to do anything, and we have to do it safely, because when it comes to Web 2, I mean, there is obviously safety stuff that needs to be done there for a variety of different reasons, but a lot of the time, it doesn't involve money. Like on social media, it doesn't involve money. And if it's 1 to 2 clicks and you're giving up a little bit of security, that's okay. But with crypto, you need to take into account security all the time, because if you don't, people stand to lose real money. So I think that doing it safely while still providing a really, really great UX for people should be the goal, and that's exactly what Argent's doing. So I'm super excited to see them continuing to roll out these integrations, because I think that they're going to be at the forefront next year. They're actually going to be a big winner, I think, in 2022 as the L2s ramp up, especially as the tokens ramp up. Like if ZK Sync do a token, when ZK Sync do a token, they've already announced they're doing one, and Argent has the integration with them. It's going to be really easy for people to kind of like farm the ZK Sync token if there is liquidity mining incentives on there using Argent. So I think Argent's going to be a great beneficiary here, and they're going to be supporting Starknet, Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, all that sort of stuff as well. And they could actually capture a large part of the market by doing that. And their marketing and BD games on point too. So they've got that down pat as well. So I'm excited to see how they go next year, especially. So an update here at Gnosis Guild, they've released something called the Zodiac Bridge module, which allows DAOs to now have cross-chain control. By equipping this module, a DAO on one chain can control the assets and interact with systems like a Gnosis Safe on an entirely different EVM chain. So this is basically cross-chain DAOs, cross-L2 DAOs. This is really cool. Because the way it kind of like happens now is that all the governance for these apps that kind of deploy to other chains is done on Ethereum, right? It's like their home base, and you can't really do any sort of governance on L2s or other chains. You have to come back to home base to do that. Now, of course, that kind of like is exclusionary. Like the people that can't afford the gas fees on Ethereum aren't going to be able to participate in governance. And on top of that, in the future, the fees are just going to keep going up. So it's going to kind of like centralize governance just through the fee cost. So allowing people to do kind of like governance things, allowing people to be part of DAOs on the L2s, on other chains, is obviously hugely beneficial for people. So really cool to see this from the Gnosis Guild here. Definitely go check it out. I'll link this in the YouTube description. I think there's a bit more information about it here on their GitHub. But yeah, really, really cool to see this module be released here. All right, so this is today's topic that I'm going to talk about for, I guess, for the next 15 minutes. So there was a token today that was released called the Gas DAO token, which basically gave you a token called Gas depending on how much money you spent on fees. I think the airdrop was kind of balked, or maybe I didn't read it that closely. They said I spent a lot less on fees than what I've spent, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I spent much more than that on fees. But yeah, you can go to I don't have the link handy, but you can go to the GasDAO website and claim the token, and then sell it or liquidity provide it on Uniswap or whatever. But that's not what I wanted to talk about on this topic here. What I wanted to talk about is the ETH burning. EIP-1559, the ETH burn leaderboard. I wrote about this in the newsletter today as well. But essentially, as you can see here, when I took this screenshot, over the last hour, the Gas DAO contract was actually the top burner of ETH. It had burned almost 200 ETH within an hour from people just claiming their token, sending it, transferring it, all that good stuff there, trading it on Uniswap and things like that. That's why Uniswap's number 2. But yeah, if you've been to the ultrasound.money website, you'll have seen this leaderboard before. I have talked about it a lot on the Refuel, I believe. I used to have it sitting next to me on my iPad, but as I don't have internet at this house yet, I can't have it running just yet. Going off my hotspot and take up too much data. But what I wanted to talk about was basically where we are today in terms of like EIP-1559, what the burn has done for Ethereum in terms of like fundamentally and narrative-wise, what it's going to look like leading into 2022 with the merge, and basically what the leaderboard can actually tell us about the Ethereum network itself. So let's start with a recap. 1559 went live, August 5th, 6th this year, obviously less than 5 months ago. We've burned 1.3 million ETH so far, which is about $5 billion, unless the ETH price is crashing as I'm making this video. It's about $5 billion last time I kind of worked it out. I think I worked it out at 3,800 per ETH there. That's a lot of ETH, right? $5 billion of potential sell pressure just gone. They're deleted. Like, it's not locked or anything. It's gone forever. That ETH is not coming back. We've had deflationary days. We've had deflationary hours. We haven't had deflationary weeks, I believe. Or maybe we've had one deflationary week during like the height of the NFT mania. Maybe. I think the net reduction is at about 70%. So we've basically had, or 60 to 70%. So we've effectively had more than a halvening with 1559, which is pretty cool. And I've talked about it. I've talked about all that stuff before, of course. But in terms of kind of like its impact on the ETH price, obviously the ETH price hasn't really done much over the last few months. I've said before that I think that 1559's impact is more of a long-term thing in terms of just constantly taking ETH supply off of the active market, and then over time it would generally lead to an ETH price rise, just as time goes on there. But the other side to it, rather than the kind of like fundamental side, is the narrative side of it. Now, we all remember that tweet from Suzu, who criticized the Ethereum community for abandoning its users and only caring about how much ETH was being burned. I talked about that on the Refuel a few weeks ago. I'm not going to rehash that here. But in terms of the narrative, I think 1559 has been quite polarizing, more polarizing than I thought it would be. Obviously, it's really positive for Ethereans. We all really love it. And for those of us who understand it and understand why it's necessary, we don't have this issue of thinking of it as something that is controversial. Now, the reason why it's controversial is because of that Suzu tweet. People kind of like think that, some people at least from what I've seen, think that the Ethereum ecosystem has over-optimized for accruing value to ETH and under-optimized on actually making the platform usable for everyday users. I obviously think that is false because we're working harder on scaling than we ever have before, but the narrative remains. And as I've said before, you can't win a narrative war based on kind of like words alone. You have to win that war by building. So essentially what we have to do to get rid of this shitty narrative is basically get these L2s adopted. And as I mentioned before, they need to have tokens. I've said this so many times, but as soon as these L2s have tokens, the narrative will shift completely. But it's been kind of funny to see that play out, because I didn't expect that at all. I didn't think to myself before 1559 went live that people would kind of look at this and be like, oh, well, Ethereum's over-optimized for pumping ETH, and now they don't really care about end users. They don't care about usability of the chain. That's obviously false, but it's a narrative that has persisted, and I always find it interesting how many of these narratives people can come up with and how many stories they can tell. Obviously, there are some people kind of like spreading that to essentially pump their other bags, their Alt L1 bags. So that's been a big thing over the last few months. Another thing that I didn't really see coming, when, though in hindsight it was obvious due to Ethereum's high fees, that these other L1s would kind of play on that, and also do liquidity mining, because that playbook is just so well refined at this point. Like, it just works wonders, obviously, because like, who doesn't like free money, right? So I underestimated a lot of that. But in terms of that narrative around Ethereum's only caring about pumping ETH, I think it's like completely wrong. Like, anytime I mentioned how much ETH was being burned, I was just celebrating it, because for me, I mean, I've been waiting for 1559 for so long, since like early 2019, so long through the bear market. It was a huge accomplishment for the Ethereum ecosystem to get these done. And it wasn't just about burning ETH. It has actually helped the network in being a better fee market where transactions are more reliable, the fees are flattened out. It's actually led to a 6 to 7% net reduction overall in fees, even though it wasn't meant to reduce fees at all. So that's been really cool. It's introduced a few other things, like forcing people to actually pay the Ethereum network instead of going around it for transactions. So for example, with MEV, people can go directly to miners to get their transactions included. Pre-1559, they didn't have to pay ETH fees. They could have paid fees in anything, and there was a 0 Gwei fee paid to the Ethereum blockchain, because the miners just took money out of band and put the transactions in. Now they can't do that. They can take money out of band, but they still have to pay that base fee in ETH to the network, which is then burned. So that's a huge benefit. And to me, that is not actually about pumping ETH. That is about preserving the economic utility of ETH and ensuring that the network stability and health can keep chugging along. Because when I look at people saying, saying, oh, you only want to pump ETH. Look, to be honest, I want ETH to go up for many different reasons, not just because I hold it, but ETH going up directly translates to Ethereum's security and decentralization. The higher the ETH price, the more economic security it has, especially under a proof of stake system. Ethereum or ETH at $4,000 versus ETH at $40,000, it's not a 10 times increase in security, because that's just not how it works, but it is a very, very big difference. Like, it costs much, much more to attack the Ethereum network under proof of stake at $40,000 than it does at $4,000. So from that point of view, I care about the ETH price because I want the network to be more secure. I want the network to be able to resist nation states. That's what we're building this stuff for. And even under proof of work, it's the same thing. Like, the higher the market cap, the more miners come online, because they're mining a valuable ETH, the more profitable it becomes if ETH keeps going up in value. And then 1559 just basically recaptures all the value that was leaking out to miners who would just sell it, right? It's always funny, like, miners are forced sellers, but by selling, they're basically suppressing the ETH price, which essentially is bad for them as well, obviously, because they're mining ETH and they wanna make a profit there too, but they're forced sellers. So from that point of view, this kind of like bad narrative that's being spread around is just silly. I don't think there's any merit to it. I don't think people are actually thinking too deeply about it. It's just something people like to harp on about to pump their other investments or pump another narrative up or whatever, anything like that. So that's the other thing when it comes to 1559. In terms of like looking forward to 2022 and how the merge is going to come into this, I mean, you guys all know the merge is going to lead to an 80 to 90% issuance reduction instantly, and then coupled with the burn, it means a deflationary ETH. I still don't think most people understand the implications of that at all, really, like at all. And I've mentioned that plenty of times in the past, but what I think people don't understand the implications of is just how powerful that narrative is going to be, not just on the merge front, but also 1559. Because when you're a traditional kind of like finance investor, when you're like someone that's just coming into crypto from that ecosystem, you're going to look at things like price to earnings and price to sales ratios to judge things on. Now, obviously, ETH as an asset cannot be judged on price to sales, price to earnings. It's money, it's a store of value. It has a lot more value in it than just kind of like its revenue generated from the burn. But the thing is that investors are going to look at this and they're going to do a PE or PS or whatever on price to earnings, price to sales on ETH. They're going to see, okay, well, the Ethereum network is generating this much in fees per day. This much is actually getting burned, which is like an earnings, because you're basically getting a pseudo dividend, because as an ETH holder, as ETH gets burned, that kind of gets redistributed to the rest of the holders because of the deflation. And from there, then they're going to kind of look at, okay, well, it's deflationary as well, right? This kind of like asset is becoming incredibly scarce, and this is kind of like the current issuance of it. And then people are going to compare it to Bitcoin. They're going to be like, okay, well, Bitcoin has this meme of being supply capped, and it's only gets scarcer over time. And then there's going to be a lot of kind of like comparisons between Bitcoin and Ethereum in terms of issuance, because people are going to be like, okay, well, ETH's net deflationary, whereas Bitcoin won't be deflationary for a very long time, and I think that's going to be very powerful. I think that's what's actually going to lead to the flippening, either leading up to the merge or after the merge. It's going to be interesting to see. I know there are some people who don't think the flipping is going to happen in 2022, but to me, if it doesn't happen in 2022, like I don't know, it just kind of feels like it has to. Like with the merge is the biggest kind of like catalyst for ETH's price I can think of. You know, as I've said before, it's bigger than staking, 1559, anything else that's happened with ETH. But then we have like all these things coming together, and then after the merge, you know, a few months after we have the withdrawals being enabled. Now, a lot of people think that withdrawals being enabled is going to lead to a mass sell-off, but that's not how it works. There's only a limited amount of ETH that can be withdrawn per day from the active validator set, and because of that kind of like withdrawal queue, there's a limited amount that can be dumped on the market. I just don't think a lot of people are going to just withdraw. I mean, I don't plan to. A lot of people I know don't plan to. Just because we're up a lot on our ETH doesn't really mean anything. They may withdraw their rewards, for example, like that they've earned, but not their actual stake. Because if you withdraw your actual stake, you're no longer a validator and you're not earning rewards anymore. And then what? You're going to go... I mean, some people will. Obviously, some people go take profits because they're up massively and all that sort of stuff there. But I think a lot of people will just sell off the rewards, which isn't that much, and the market can handle that. So we might have some turbulence there. No, we will have some turbulence there. There'll be a lot of kind of like narratives being spread about that. Bears trying to get like a better price on ETH and all that sort of stuff there. But I think the next couple of years is going to be phenomenal for ETH. I know the price action since May has actually been pretty shitty, right? It's gone up and down like so much like a yo-yo, and then leading into the end of the year now, it's just kind of like really shitty price action. But I am steadfast about Q1 being really, really big for the Ethereum ecosystem, for ETH. January even, I think, is going to be a pretty good month. I think right now, from what I've noticed across the board, I would say like at least 50% of the people that are usually around are like just not online at all. And that's just on the low end. I'm sure it's much higher than that. The markets are definitely obviously very, very quiet. There's lower liquidity. You know, the people that are sticking around right now are just kind of like opportunistic. They're trying to sell into low liquidity, trying to cause dumps, all that sort of stuff there. I do think that January is going to basically completely reverse that, and we're going to have like a really big, a really fun time then. But as you guys know, I don't have a crystal ball or anything like that, but I'm cautiously optimistic for 2022. I might do a kind of like reflections video on one of the refuels. What is it today? It's the 29th today. 31st is New Year's Eve. So, okay, tomorrow then, because I won't be doing a refuel on Friday. So yeah, tomorrow I'm going to do a bit of reflections about this year and about kind of like what's happened this year. Because I was thinking about it today. 2021 has been probably the weirdest year for crypto ever, I would have to say. Just thinking back through all the years. And the number one reason I think that is because it basically invalidated everyone's predictions. Like there were very few people who actually saw what was coming in 2021 and played it correctly. But I'm going to cover that tomorrow on tomorrow's refill. It's going to be like a little bit of a recap of the year. I think that'll be interesting to go over. But I think that's going to be it for today's episode. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.